Hi, my name's Lauren and I'm an account manager at Yetis Digital.
Hi, I'm Andy Barr and I'm the MD and founder of Yetis Digital.
So today, as part of our monthly newsletter, we're doing a little video about influencer engagement and outreach and how to find the best people. And the best person to speak to is Loza, because she does so much of this for us and is absolutely brilliant at it.
Thanks, Andy. Means a lot.
What a way to start. So I thought the first thing to talk about is the fact that we've done quite a few campaigns recently. So Lauren, if you want to talk about Optical Express.
Yeah, we've been working with Optical Express for quite a few months now. One of the key fundamentals is sort of SEO and link building for the website. And I've been sort of talking to vloggers and bloggers, securing videos, tutorials, sort of reviews of laser eye surgery, and we've had some really good results. We've had Lisa Gregory, who actually had the laser eye surgery herself and made a great video about it, and we had Poppy Rawson, who made a really, really nice beauty tutorial sort of outlining the different styles of makeup that suit different sort of styles of spectacles that Optical Express carries. So yeah, some really sort of nice videos for Optical Express.
I think it's really interesting from our side to see the sort of move away from brands just concentrating on, you know, the heavy hitting media and, you know, and looking more towards influencers now.
Definitely, and I think it's been sort of quite a heavy talked about thing, whether vloggers and bloggers should talk about if they're being paid and if they are sort of advertorials rather than if they're just sort of reviews from the heart. But despite obviously both the videos saying that they teamed up with Optical Express, they still obviously hit all the audiences. We're getting great feedback from their engaged followers, so I don't think that it's had any negative impact at all. And
I think so. We've done campaigns like this now for probably the last 5 years. So people like National Trust and Superdry more recently were doing some stuff in the fitness, emerging fitness blogger arena. But I think one of the things that we have been totally shocked about is the volumes of traffic that these bloggers are kicking over. So, you know, we look at the Daily Mail and it probably only sends over 300 or 400 unique visitors, but bloggers, you know, we can see thousands.
Yeah, it's really a massive up and coming thing, and I think something that PRs probably do need to focus a bit more on, because often blogger outreach is sort of put aside as something to do when on a week when you're not concentrating on focusing on journalists and you're not sending in a press release. It's something like a side project, but I actually think it needs to have sort of its own basis and something that needs to be constantly worked on, because it's about sort of building the relationship with the vlogger and bloggers, and a lot of the time it's their full-time job, so it's sort of all they're doing and their only source of income. So you really need to make sure that you're finding the right sort of people to represent the brand you're working for, and not just going to whoever maybe has the biggest followers or whoever has the biggest following, because their audiences might not necessarily be who your brand, say Optical Express or Superdry, is trying to target. So it's really about doing the research.
And I think that leads on nicely to the, you know, how we find influencers, and I think how PR people are far better placed than sort of social and SEO people in finding bloggers, because you know, we take the natural look at things rather than just concentrating on numbers. And I know, for example, you've got a good example of a well-known brand who almost let a blogger slip through their fingers because they didn't understand.
Yeah, because obviously and it's no fault of their own, what they're looking for is sort of the ones that's going to get them the best SEO benefit, who's going to get them the most views and the most followers. But I think it's sort of taking a look at who has the most overall appeal and who is having the most engagement, and maybe hasn't got the oldest blog, so doesn't have the best sort of domain authority on their website or blog, but has the potential in maybe a year or two's time, with the way that they're going and the way that they're growing at the moment, to be sort of one of the worldly bloggers or vloggers. So it's sort of looking at the thing as a whole, like you said, rather than just the facts as it stands now.
I think that's exactly right, because we PRs hopefully can kind of see that we see like the real life influence. So we know that SEOs don't come out of their offices, you know, they have a monitor tan, you know, they're just plugged into spreadsheets, whereas PRs probably get out a little bit more and go and meet journalists, bloggers, influencers. So we know, for example, that ex-bloggers maybe got a DA of 20 because they've just moved from being a journalist to becoming a full-time blogger. So on paper that doesn't look so good, but in the real life, you know, where people have a drink, maybe a porn star martini, and get out, we know that person is actually really influential because they, you know, they've got that ready-built community. I think that's what we can bring over, you know, your traditional SEO or sort of social aspects.
I think it's really important as well. to actually look at what they're talking about in their everyday lives, and if what they're blogging and what they're vlogging about is actually what they're talking about, because I think it's really easy to tell if a vlogger is just in it for the money or in it for sort of the free stuff, and whether they actually care about the brand. And I think that's with Optical Express, we actually found vloggers who were really passionate about what they were doing and talking about, and it came across in their vlogs and to their audiences. So,
and I think the panel that Lauren was talking about earlier, where we had big ticket fashion bloggers in there from Cosmo, Fashion Mumbler, Hannah Gale, you know, they said actually if we're actually interested in a brand, then we're more likely to do more for it. You know, obviously get paid, but you know, give newsletter mentions, give social mentions. But that, you know, let's take it back a step, Loza. So you've got a dickhead MD, and he comes to you and he says, "I want 50 emerging fashion bloggers." What do you do? What's the first step of that for you?
The first thing for me is go to Twitter. I mean, I think that's, or well, for fashion maybe Instagram and Twitter both, but I think you've got to look at it from the whole perspective. Blogger base, go through blogger base and check. And really just see who sort of the people that I'm already following and the people that I'm influenced by myself sort of personally are following as well, and not necessarily just focus on the numbers.
And I think one of the interesting things, because obviously I run the agency but I don't do any real work, one of the things I found quite interesting was, so when we were doing the stuff with Superdry and we needed to identify 100 emerging sport and fashion bloggers, we went to Bloggerbase, best blogger software out there, and we pulled off, say, 1,000 names, and then we spread them around the team, and we checked every blog, every social account. To, you know, we use things like fakers.status people to catch out people who bought bought likes. You know, we really did drill down. I think that's essential. Too many people go to the likes of Gorkana, pull off a list, send it over to the client and hope for the best. And I like the fact that we go that extra mile.
Yeah, it's all too easy to lie on a media pack, isn't it, and say you're getting a specific amount of unique monthly visitors when actually the real answer is a lot lower.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you have to watch out for. But so we've found a list and we've kind of got that all done. What do you feel, you know, for me, for the next steps, that is try and build the relationship?
Yeah, I think definitely sort of engage with them sort of on a personal level, not just I'm a PR, you're a blogger, how can you help me, how can I get you free stuff? Actually sort of create relationships, because a lot of the time, a lot of the vloggers and bloggers I'm talking to, they're my age, they're sort of in their early 20s, they're talking about the same TV shows that I'm talking about on Twitter, they're watching the same films, they're eating the same food. So there's always sort of that platform on Twitter to sort of build up the relationships, and then hopefully when the day comes one day, it might not come, but if it does, when maybe a brand I'm working with could use them or that could sort of help them at all as well as they help the brand, then it sort of, the idea of me is already in their mind, so they will email me back. But I would never DM.
Not on a first date?
No, never DM on a first date, and never DM asking a blogger or vlogger for some help, because that is a way to get them followed.
I think one of the things that I learned from the panel, Hannah was saying that she got WhatsApped by a PR, and that was just like, take the shame. But I think also one of the things where the penny finally dropped for me on the panel, that these guys, we call them bloggers, and we're scared of them because we're worried that we'll end up on some snarky Facebook group as like dickhead PRs that have done a bad outreach. But one of the things that I found really interesting was that people like Hannah said, well, actually, very similar to a journo, because she is a former journo, I'm not interested in the relationship long term. You know, if you've got a good story, come to me, I don't care about that. And that kind of made me think, actually, yeah, this is just the same approach, but to a different audience.
I think an interesting point that Hannah has actually made on her blog as well is the different reactions she got from PRs after moving from being a journalist to being a PR. She said, like, her followers went down, people just aren't as engaged because they don't think that relationship is beneficial mutually anymore, when actually, if anything, I think for a vlogger or a blogger, it's more beneficial because they're not writing for the
but that'll be the SEO people again.
Yeah.
They thought, well, she's come off Gorkana, or you know, she's still on there, but you know, she's not down for doing Metro and all that. So actually, we'll take her off our influencer list. But the reality is, she's far more influential now than she probably was, because she's writing for a mix of people, and she has her own platform where she's doing amazing things.
Cosmo last week, her listicles on the Metro is still some of like the most. I still see some of her listicles from like last year. Still, like on Facebook, people share them. The wig one about the reasons you know you're in your 20s, that was everywhere. So obviously she is the kind of blogger that you want sort of to be knowing. People like her.
We're loving her off a bit now, aren't we?
Yeah.
We seem a bit infatuated. But I think, so we found out how, in the video so far, we found out how we identify people, how we sort of build that relationship. And I guess it sort of leads on to that murky area then and of, you know, do you have to pay for stuff?
Yeah, and obviously that is the big question. And I think when we work with brands who obviously have the capacity to sort of give away free things or offer free treatments, then it is obviously going to give that interest. But then at the same time, maybe some vloggers or bloggers with maybe less of a presence at the moment will just be happy to maybe take some information, some advice, some sort of feature work or some text, anything really. And they wouldn't necessarily want the money, but maybe sort of a mention on their own social.
Yeah.
So maybe it would be sort of you give us a link on your blog and we'll mention you on our Twitter that has sort of 20,000 plus followers. So it's sort of
it's the same as
benefit.
you know you wouldn't go to Cosmo and ask them for a free full page ad, would you? You'd pay for it, and that's essentially what you're doing with bloggers. But I think the grey area is there because if the blogger, as we said, is interested in you, then yeah, they might be more willing to do something for free or for gifting. Whereas I think if we're entirely honest, and if you were we haven't got a cashback client, so if you were a dull cashback site and you know you went to a high-end fashion blogger and wanted some content around vouchers or the excitement around vouchers, to be honest, that doesn't fit with your natural copy. You're going to want paying for that because it's not as nice as writing about the latest fashion trend of X brand.
And they've always going to be thinking about how they're coming across to their followers, and they don't want to maybe be perceived as a cop-out or someone that's just doing anything for the money, which I think I have seen some bloggers, it's really obvious that they're being sponsored or they're being paid to promote a product that normally they wouldn't think twice about talking about on their social media platforms, and it just makes me think, oh well, you've sort of sold out a bit. Fair play, you're getting paid for it, but I don't really want to read your blog anymore. So
I think the bloggers as well, the thing that I've learned is that there's still a bit of confusion. So they all know they're supposed to declare if they've been paid for the post or if they've been gifted things. I think the grey area is, and as I understand it, the IAB have said, look, if you give a link, if you give a link because you've been paid, then you should make that a no-follow link. Now, the bottom line is, and I learned this last week, the vast majority of bloggers that I spoke to don't actually know how to make a link no-follow.
No.
They've got their WordPress login and they've handed over the advertising side of it to maybe an ad company, but they don't really know how to do that. It's still a real grey area. Do you give a link? Do you not give a link?
I think you should always give a link.
Yes, so do I. And one of the other areas that I was quite interested in, most of the big bloggers that I spoke to actually give copy approval.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'd never, in my historic PR days.
If you dare ask a journalist
for
copy approval, they'd just...
We wouldn't be sat here chatting now, we'd be dead in a stream.
Drop you.
But no, I think that's one of the big things as well, where bloggers are giving copy approval. But that also brings a problem as well, because brands are so protective of what's written.
Yeah.
They don't let the content flow naturally.
And I think that was one of the real learning curves with the Lisa Gregory video, because obviously there was a lot of points that, rightly so, Optical Express wanted to make sure remained in the video. But at the same time, we very much wanted it to view as a viewer for her audiences, like any one of her other videos that's not obviously sponsored. So it was finding that line between making sure all the points were hit and making sure all the mentions were made and links were given, etc. But that still showcased her personality, and it came across as very much sort of her style. And I think that was sort of where we really sort of got it right with that video. Because
I think one of the things I've heard brands saying too much, or bloggers, what they're saying is that the natural conversation, if you love something, will be, I love this makeup, it's brilliant. But there's always, it's just nature and the way humans behave. There'll always be something that's like, this makeup's brilliant, this is absolutely fantastic, but maybe I didn't like the colour of the packaging. And that's where brands need to take a step back and go, all right, just let that go, because that's how people talk.
And that's when you see the good social media brands as opposed to bad ones, when they only retweet and they only reply to the good or the positive comments, and they either ignore or they try and do like a sneaky DM so they don't have to make it public, the criticism or the negative comments. Well, I always appreciate it if I've made a complaint to a brand, if they really publicly respond to me so their followers can see that they made a mistake or they've done something wrong and they're working on it, then I always think that's a lot more honest and transparent and the same with brands and bloggers as well, I think it should be.
Okay, so let's wrap up. What's your number one tip for blogger identification?
Do your research. Don't think it's just like a half-assed job. It's a really, really important thing, and don't be sort of disheartened if they never get back to you because they're busy, and sometimes they even have full-time jobs, so it's just sort of working at it and building the relationships. That was more than one.
We've covered them off. There's nothing left for me to say other than thank you very much, Lauren Wilden, PR and outreach superstar.
Yeah.
And
thanks,
we look
Andy.
forward to speaking to you again next month.
Okay, yay.